All right, welcome to this session. My name is Jessica Henry. I'm a creative lead at Pinterest, and joining me remotely from Portland is Jaime Schmidt. Jaime is the founder of Schmidt's Naturals, which is a body care company, and they make one of my favorite products, a natural deodorant. And Jaime also just released a book called Supermaker, Crafting Business on Your Own Terms. And I'm so excited for the session today. I think that Jaime's heart for entrepreneurialism and her experience is going to be perfect as we talk about things like building an audience, finding the right fit for your story, telling your story. I think that a lot of what Jaime has sort of been through and her experiences are going to land with us today. And a funny way that Jaime and I connected, she had shared on Twitter a few weeks ago that Pinterest played an early role in her business, and we were initially chatting there, and here she is today. So I'm so excited to chat. Welcome, Jaime.
Hey, hi Jess, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about Schmidt's Naturals and your journey.
I'd love to. Well, I started Schmidt's back in 2010 here in Portland. This was really off the heels of many years of soul searching and really trying to discover my purpose and my passion. I had graduated from college with a degree in business and quickly had found myself working up the corporate ladder and realized, pretty early on that it wasn't for me, but I didn't quite know what that meant or what I should be doing with my life. And so I went on a journey of trying all sorts of different side projects, exploring different career paths and different jobs and employers. And finally, I had discovered that I had a real inherent love for formulating personal care products. I was also pregnant at the time, and so I was paying close attention to the products I was using in my skin. So naturally, I was creating lotions, shampoos, soaps, and a deodorant. And being in Portland here, there was no shortage of opportunities to get out and sell. So I would take my products out on the weekends at the farmers markets and street festivals. At the time, still not quite understanding the real business potential in what I was doing. But I quickly recognized that the customers were loving my products and that this was something that I wanted to be doing and that there was real potential to start a business.
Tell me about the moment whenever you realized, okay, this could really be a business for me.
Mm-hmm. I was having conversations at these markets with customers who were really just raving about the product and telling me that my products were changing their life. And it was really not something I hadn't been anticipating. I knew that the products I made smelled good and they worked well, and I was excited about them. But to hear from people that they were truly changing lives was really eye opening for me. And I recognized quickly there was a real opportunity in the market for a natural deodorant that worked, for one, that looked different from what was already on the shelves, and that smelled amazing. Had more modern, interesting packaging. And so I decided pretty quickly that I did want to turn this into a business. And once I made that decision, I started approaching retailers, and it wasn't long before Schmidt's was on the shelves and stores around Portland.
So, share the story about Pinterest and how that played a role in your business early on.
At the time, I had decent distribution for Schmidt's. I was in a lot of the local retailers, had started to make my way into some different regional grocery stores and started to expand nationally, but didn't yet understand the potential with international sales until I got a phone call one day from the Netherlands, and there was a retailer who wanted to order 200 deodorants from me. At the time, that was huge. My batch sizes were about 20 deodorants. That would last me 3 weeks. So getting this call was really mind blowing. And I also was just shocked that somebody across the world had heard of my little brand that I'd started in my kitchen. And so when I asked her how she had learned of Schmitz, she told me that somebody on Pinterest had said that they loved the deodorant. They had compared it to another deodorant brand that the retailer had been carrying. So it caught her attention, and she called me. And then from there, my international distribution really built out. That was the real turning point for Schmidt's becoming a global brand.
So early on in Schmidt's, you talked about the fact that you were really passionate about body care and about some of the things that you were making. Do you have any advice for our audience today? That a lot of them are really passionate about things and maybe considering it as a future business. Do you have any advice or maybe a few steps or thoughts around taking that step?
I'd say just try things, get your hands dirty, and just get out there and see what you love. I too, didn't understand what I was passionate about. I didn't really, know my calling until I just started exploring and trying different things. You'll know when you found it. It'll speak to you, and you'll just feel an inspiration that you haven't felt before. And once you find that, just roll with it and see where it takes you.
Talk to me about things like word of mouth growth and partnerships. You've done some cool things with Jane Goodall, Justin Bieber. How have those things been instrumental for Schmidt's?
Word of mouth has been key for Schmidt's from day one. Thinking back to those days at the market and customers talking about the product and really just getting in the moment feedback too. I think that's a big key part of this as well is talking to your customers and understanding what they want to see in your product. In terms of influencers and outside partners, for Schmidt's, we were constantly reaching out to people offering samples. I started this business in 2010, and back then, like, the YouTube community of influencers was just huge. And it was an easy, very cheap, often free way for us to spread the word about Schmidt's, and it was really effective for us. In fact, a lot of the retailer relationships that we secured were through recommendations from customers or influencers. And then as the company got bigger, that became increasingly important. And we looked at opportunities to partner with people that did have great reach. You mentioned Jane Goodall. She was a really important partner for Schmidt's because she shared a lot of the values that we did. She had an audience that cared about a lot of the things that were important to Schmidt's as a brand. I think today, especially with the economic crisis that we're in, having these established relationships with partners and influencers is increasingly important. It's a way to reach more customers and do so in a way that is an extension of your own brand message and kind of opportunity to reach a community that you otherwise wouldn't.
You mentioned the economic times that we're in right now, and one thing that I think is such an interesting parallel is how Schmidt's, you started it in the 2009, 2010 economic recession, and we're sort of in that state again right now. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs, for people who are maybe taking their passion, turning it into their full-time job right now?
Mm-hmm. I'd say don't be too quick to give up your full-time job. I think people really struggle with that. Do I need to go all in right away, or can I work a side job? And what I did with Schmitz that worked really well was I had a couple side projects that were related to the work I was doing with Schmitz. So, for example, I was making bulk lotion for a local spa, doing private label. I was also working for an e-com retailer who was making these DIY kits. And so while I was working separately from Schmitz, I was still doing work that would help boost my reputation as a maker, as a producer of natural personal care products. And then also, knowing where to spend. I also believe that a lot of founders feel they have to hire, a big team right away, or they might think it's important to hire a C-suite. I'd caution against that. I'd say go as long as you can without hiring. Really understand the priority in where you're putting your money. One rule of thumb that I always fall back on is if the expense is directly leading to revenue or increased awareness for the brand, that's a smart place to spend your money.
That's great. And I think really practical advice for creators and makers and entrepreneurs now. I wanted to ask you a little bit about audience. One of the things that we're talking about a lot today is building an audience. And what I thought was so special about the Schmidt's Natural story is how you really built an audience so organically, so authentically. Can you tell me a little bit about, either your strategy at the time, or looking back now, what you could see that you were learning along the way about building an audience?
Mhm. I think what helps is in the earliest days, if your audience is you, that gives you a strategic advantage. For me, I was making a natural deodorant that smelled good, that worked, and something that I wanted to use personally. So that made it a little bit easier for me to understand, who my target customer was and what he or she wanted. So that really led, my product development. A lot of what I made was really based on my own insights and intuition. As the company gets bigger, that changes. But it is really important in the earliest days I shouldn't say it changes, it expands. But it is important in the earliest days to know your audience and keep it small and keep it targeted in the beginning, but also keep an open mind around it. One way that we were able to do that successfully with Schmitz was to try different approaches to targeted ads. So, for example, we would advertise on Google with different messaging that would reach different consumer bases, and then we could see which customers would respond with the greatest interest, and then tweak our messaging or really target our advertising to that group. And so as you scale, you want to really focus on those groups that are responding the most, but then continue to kind of grow it and take risks and maybe try to reach audiences that you otherwise maybe wouldn't have assumed are your target customer. I like to say, know your audience at first and then grow your audience. With a natural deodorant, it was really for a niche customer back when I started in 2010. But as time went on and people started to trust that, hey, natural deodorants actually can work, I was able to expand that group and to reach, a whole new community of people that never would have imagined even trying a natural product.
I love that, and I loved what you said around know your audience, because I think that especially if you are audience number one, if you're building for yourself, I think that helps really land an authentic story. Tell us a little bit about your work with entrepreneurs today. What are you doing? What are you working on? And more importantly, what patterns are you seeing with the sort of type of entrepreneur that you're working with?
I have a few projects right now. Well, the one I'm still involved with Schmitz. The company was acquired in 2017 by Unilever, but I've stayed on with the brand spokesperson, and I'll always be involved as founder. One of my projects right now, or I guess where they're really utilizing me, is with their international expansion. So as Schmitz continues to scale and increase distribution overseas, I've played a crucial role in getting that message out. I've also started an investment fund. It's called Color, and my goal there is to really support underrepresented entrepreneurs who otherwise don't have access to funding. So women, people of color, underestimated founders. And my passion there is with consumer products companies. So I'm always looking for a really interesting brand that's doing something differently. And I also have my media company, Supermaker, and with that, my goal is to reach makers, creators, artists who are looking to turn their hobbies and their interests into a business. And through doing that, we will feature uh, stories of entrepreneurs and founders who otherwise maybe don't have their stories told with the bigger business outlets. Also sharing content that's relevant. So, for example, when COVID hit, we had a lot of content around working from home. And then also my book. My book is also called Super Baker, Crafting Business on Your Own Terms. That's just an extension of all my other efforts. So really just reaching the most amount of entrepreneurs that I can and just sharing my experience. The purpose of my book was to really make entrepreneurship tangible to everybody. I want people to know that it's within their reach, they can do it, and I offer, my story as an example. And through the storytelling, I offer a lot of tangible, takeaway advice that entrepreneurs can easily implement.
Well, and I think that this is a great tee up for a little bit about your book, Supermaker, Crafting Business on Your Own Terms. Tell us about your vision for that and how that also can help meet, maybe where entrepreneurs might be in those early days.
I wrote my book really to let any artist, creator, maker know that entrepreneurship is within reach. There's no playbook for business. There's no right way to do it. My goal was really to tell my story and then help people understand, the lessons that I have learned and maybe ways they can avoid common pitfalls or setbacks or challenges that they might encounter. And I wanted it to be written in a way that didn't make business feel intimidating, right? Because it's not. It doesn't have to be. Of course, it's scary. There's a lot of things that we have to learn along the way. But anybody can do it. If you have a product that you believe in and you are set out to turn it into a business, then I think it's within reach, and I think it's an opportunity that anybody can really embrace. So I was excited to share my story in my book, Supermaker, Crafting Business on Your Own Terms. It really starts with, the earliest part of my life and kind of how I was finding myself throughout my journey. And then it gets deep into me starting the brand and then scaling it up to an acquisition brand new, everything that went into that. And all the things I've learned along the way. And there's a lot of practical takeaway advice in there for entrepreneurs.
I loved what you said, that there's no playbook for business, although I would argue that Supermaker is a bit of a playbook in a really wonderful way. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining this session today. If you want to follow Jaime on Pinterest, you can follow @SupermakerOfficial. And if you're interested in her book, go to supermaker.com/book. Thanks so much, Jaime.
Hi, thanks, Jess.